Hello. I figured as I did the original Fi, well not the original, but the 80s Fi I should say, and I figured how I did the Fi 2, why not the original? That being the 1958 The Fi, starring Vincent Price. What can I say about it? Just like the 80s one, it's a classic. It's kind of interesting to see the old technology, the old computers back from 1958. It starts off, as people may remember, as this guy just working a night shift and he sees this thing going on, thinking, what the fuck is it? Goes in, sees his really horrible murder, sees some poor guy's head turn into fucking mush. I feel in this, it was a lot more gruesome in the way that the guy got it, unlike the original where it was more of a mercy killing. Where can I start with The Fi from 1958? So again, you get this horrible murder, a woman running off, and you get a phone call from Vincent Price. It's interesting that the characters' names are all different in this, unlike the 80s one with Seth Bungle. I can never remember the name of the one in the 50s one, but he had a different character name. Vincent Price goes to investigate what he believes to be his brother, going ahead of himself, his brother's murder, his death. Apparently he had a star on his leg, and that's how they knew it was his brother, because his hand was turned to mush and his head was turned to mush. And to make it worse, this was a press that went down. Not only did it turn his brother's head into mush, but the press was pressed down twice, what turned the poor bastard's head and his hand into fucking mush. To cut the story short, the wife did it. The wife murdered him. I don't like the 58 The Fi because it was more of a murder mystery, and the one who played the character was a well-known actor. Remember the TV series, for you probably won't, before anyone did, Beneath the Sea? Sad to say the actor's no longer with us, but he played the character in that, and in the Bond films, Live and Let Die, and Licence to Kill, he played a character called Felix Leiter. Granted, there have been a lot of actors who played that character when it came to James Bond, but he was well known for playing the character Felix Leiter in 2 Bond movies, again, Live and Let Die and Licence to Kill. He actually played the character who was double years well after. Jeff Goldblum played that character. Starts off there, and now it goes to the story of why did the wife kill him? Is she insane or is she not? And she tells the story of how it all happened. The scientist, her husband, invented this amazing thing, what can transport one item into the other, similar like what they did in the 80s. And he's doing experiments. Let's not forget the little cute pussycat called Dandelion, which poor Dandelion ended up becoming Mother 2's in space when all you can hear is meow meow. Granted, I don't normally like cruelty to animals, but we all know reality, no animals was hurt in this, and it's pretty funny to hear a cat going meow. How the fuck did it do that far away in space? It's beyond me. But you go with it, it was a different era and it was a different time. He gets things right when he transports one item to the other. The only difference is you don't see what happens to him in this, unlike the one with Jeff Goldblum. It's a different story. But through a lot of 50s monster films and B sci-fi monster films, this was your typical known for it was that in that era. You've got a wife and he's got his son in this. Again, it's a total different film from the classical 80s one. And the wife wonders what's happened to her husband. Vincent Price is there, and so on. The only thing all the way through the film is you've got a guy at that beat walking around with a fucking bag on his head. If you know the 50s one, I'm not making it up. It's a guy walking around with a fucking bag on his head. But who's the acting in it? She says, right, knock for once, knock for twice. And he did that all the way through. And people think, oh, that's not really hard. You just did it. Tie that with a bag on your head. Some of the acting was pretty hard for him to do. It was damn good acting for the actor, He did that. and did it once. I think once was for yes and twice was for no. Could have either one done that. But it's still a good idea, and I thought it was tougher for the 1958 The Fly. They're trying to find the Fly where it happened, and we found out now that one molecule was fought with the other molecule, and the only way to turn him back is to find the Fly with a right head. As you know the film, the Fly got away, and then it had to be a mercy killing. She had to kill him. Now at first they thought, well, let's flop you around. So they do. And we all know the famous scene. She takes the bag off the head, and you've got the Fly's head. Yeah, the Fly's head. For its time, it was definitely a soccer, and I do love to. Everyone always remember the scene where he sees her. It's like 9 images, and now the Fly sees. I kind of loved that. I felt they should have done that in the 80s one, but different era. I do know that the actor who played the Fly did one it where you see bits of his face showing, you know, when he's in there. But you know, for that era, because they only just got away with someone to die with a Fly's head on him. Didn't work, so the only thing to do was to kill him. I do feel it's a bit more gruesome when how he dies. Like I said, he uses a pest machine, turns his head into fucking mush. Now Vincent Price and this cop, who was all the way through the film by the way, thinks he's Stu Larry. Naturally you're going to think someone's Stu Larry. Oh yeah, my husband, he died this machine, he transported, and he's died walking around with a bag on his head, and he's half Fly, half human. So naturally they're going to put her in a mental asylum. So if I said that, they'd only think the same with me. But then we all know the scene. The cop is sat on the bench, he keeps saying, help me, help me. And then you've got the scene, as we all remember, where they die, the Fly's head, half Fly, and the big spider's about to eat it, splat. Remember? Help me. That was from the classic 58 The Fly. Well known as we know, as I said with the 80s one, the film was taken off a Playboy book. You know, a little novel on Playboy magazine. Nothing dirty, it was on the Playboy magazine. And that was what inspired them to make it into a film. The director was well known at that time for doing a lot of B sci-fi movies. And as sad as it was, he never got to see the film and its big break, because he sadly passed away before the film premiered in the theatrical release of The Fly. They had a few follow-ups who had Return of the Fly in '59. It's not a bad film, but I do feel it's a step down. Granted, I do like a lot of black and white films. You know, I've got a lot. The original 1960s Psycho. I already announced the 1968 Night of the Living Dead. So I do like things from black and white era. But this was in Technicolor, and I felt Return of the Fly was in black and white. And there's bits where it's laughable. You see a guy with a Fly's head on his body, and there's bits where he's trying to hold the head on his body, and it's very noticeable. But for effects in that era, I let that fly over my fucking head. But it's not bad for what it is, you know, it's your typical B-popped on movie. Then in '65, they had Curse of the Fly. I always thought it was a bit this, is it a rant, is it a review? Because it's totally different than the first two Fly films. But the '58 one's always been my favourite. And as remakes go to admit that the '80s one is a lot better and better it's all done. But it doesn't mean I hate the '58 one. For what it was a classic. It's like the Blob. If I choose one of my blobs I like, it would have to be the '88 Blob. But I do respect the '58 Blob. It was a different era, and it was a different period in what movies were in that era. And that's why I salute The Fly. You know, it was a different time period. It's also interesting to see what the old technology and the old computers look like in that era. Totally different than now. But that was the 1958 The Fly. In a couple of weeks, who knows? I'll probably do Return of the Fly. To me, that was more of a remake. And like I say, I thought it was a step down. But I don't hate it. I don't hate any of them, to be honest. So, as to say, don't be afraid. Be very afraid. As I will do in a couple of weeks' time, probably Return of the Fly. Into then, I'm going to go and look for some flies to kill. Very odd that it's this time of the month, but See you later.